Binghamton, New York, alongside, as always, Andrew Barczyk from Chicago, Illinois. Andy, this is the kind of that weird in-between time, after the Thrilling 32 selection show, but before we start revealing the winners. And as people are filling out their brackets, they're probably wondering, well, what about all those other categories we voted for? We gave our steel rankings, we gave our wood rankings, but we voted on a lot of other crap as well. When are we going to find out about that? Well, tonight is the night where we'll give you a little bit of a taste of the Ride Warrior Choice Awards results before we start getting into the roller coaster rankings, which is what everyone is always so excited about. So tonight, we will be revealing the winners of the other categories that you voted for during the Ride Warrior Choice Awards 2017. We've got 14 or 15 topics here. You voted for 15 topics. We're going to talk about the 14 tonight because a few weeks ago we did the most anticipated ride for 2018 show where we revealed that Steel Vengeance was the winner of the Ride Warrior Choice Awards most anticipated 2018 ride from the voters, and Andy and I also went through our most anticipated rides. So we're not going to touch on that one a whole lot tonight. We're going to talk about the other 14 categories. But Andy, any thoughts before we jump in to this year's big winners?
The thing that we always try and do with this is we try and change up the questions that we hear from a lot of other polls. The stuff seems to be kind of the same every single year. We got into this whole thing, like I said before, that people complained about the GTA so much. So this, like you said, we try and keep the questions fresh, try and change them up every year, bring some back to see if there's any big changes. And then next year, look forward to new questions. So if you have any ideas for new questions for maybe next year's Ride Warrior Choice Awards, feel free to leave comments down below, and we'll take notes and possibly include them in the poll for next year.
That's right. Like we said, we have 15 categories every year. We like to have that, it's a nice round number. And, 7 or 8 or what's that?
It's an odd number.
Yes. It's yes, it's an odd number, but it's a friendly number, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyways, there's always like 7, 8, or 9 questions that we ask every year. Like your favorite new ride, most anticipated ride is one. I think we're going to keep doing because that's an interesting one. We like to do like drop rides and dark rides, some of your standard ones, but then we throw in some new ones. And so, like you said, some of them were suggested by fans this year. One we'll get to a little later is favorite signature food item. That was one that was suggested by a fan of ours on the Ride Warrior Choice Award and Thrilling 32 Facebook page. As we were preparing the ballot this year, we were asking for some ideas. Favorite roller coaster manufacturer was another one, which we'll get to in a little bit. So if there's no more questions or comments, let's get into it. And as always, we like to start with one of the big ones. We like to start and end with one of the big awards. But, Andy, the first one we'll get into tonight is the favorite new ride of 2017.
Ooh.
Now, we're going to do this a little bit differently than last year. Last year, we kind of threw up some of the top vote getters, sort of not nominations, really. We threw up the top 5 vote getters and then revealed the final percentages and everything. We're going to do it a little bit differently this year to for time's sake a little bit.
Yeah.
Because did run long last year. So we're just going to go and give you the top 5 in reverse order from number 5 and then reveal the number 1 winner at the end is how we're going to do it for these tonight. So coming in 5th place for favorite new ride of 2017 was the Lek Coaster. And that is one that we talked about in the Thrilling 32 preview show. So nice to see that one getting in there. Coming in at number 4 is Mind Blower at Fun Spot America, Kissimmee. Talked a little bit about that one as well. With 11% of the vote, at number 3 is Flight of Passage at Disney's Animal Kingdom, one that you spoke very, very highly of. For the second year in a row, we have a non-U.S. coaster coming in second place with 18% of the vote. DC Rivals Hypercoaster coming in at number 2 for favorite new ride of 2017. And the Ride Warrior Choice Award for the favorite new ride of 2017 with 38% of the vote is Mystic
Mine Ride.
yeah, very good. Mystic Timbers at Kings Island. I don't think that's going to shock too many people.
No.
We do have a very roller coaster heavy audience here at COASTER-net. So nice to see Flight of Passage doing well. That is one that you rode, and I believe that's the one that you voted for.
I absolutely did vote for that one. Flight of Passage I thought was an outstanding ride. It takes kind of what I would consider old technology. This Soarin' idea. It's a completely new seats setup. But it's the same general idea of what they got going on in there, but changing it to the point where they really make it exciting and new, and really outdo themselves. Whereas I hate Soarin', I absolutely love Flight of Passage. My number one dark ride anywhere, or even any other non-coaster ride anywhere.
Wow.
So I really like Flight of Passage, but obviously Mystic Timbers, is going to be the runaway favorite here. It's a fine roller coaster in a year that maybe one would argue was a little bit down year for roller coasters. Like, you just look at this list, and DC Rivals Hypercoaster opened up in October, and maybe might have had a little bit more traction if it opened up a little bit earlier. But they're on a completely different season down there, down under.
Well, and we did have Australian voters voting this year, so credit to a lot of them because they did vote and got their ride up to number 2 in favorite new ride, much like we saw a Terran from Phantasialand last year doing very well. So there you go for favorite new ride. Moving on, we'll go to the favorite shooting dark ride of 2017. This is one we like to do every year. Coming in in 5th place is Ghostwood Estate at Kennywood Park in West Mifflin, Pennsylvania. That's sort of one of the Boo Blasters-esque rides that we always see in here. Coming in at number 4, again, apologies for mispronunciations of European rides here. Mouse au Chocolat from that one's from Phantasialand, right? I should have looked at that before, but that is one that has done well the last couple years here. Number 3 is Wonder Mountain's Guardian with 13% of the vote from Canada's Wonderland. Coming in at number 2 with just under 20% of the vote was last year's winner, Men in Black Alien Attack. So we have a new
champ.
We have a new champ, favorite shooting dark ride, and with 28.5% of the vote, it is Justice League Battle for Metropolis from the Six Flags parks. And, you and I debated on how we should have handled that, and we kind of decided that we were going to lump them all together, just, for the sake of they're the exact same ride for the most part. So
for the most part. There's
very subtle differences, but it would seem...
There's some that aren't so subtle differences. The one at St. Louis is far inferior to the other ones. The one in St. Louis, I was not a huge fan of at all. Mm-hmm. Having been on the one at Great America, it was like, because St. Louis had one of the first ones. Now, I've heard Over Texas is probably like a lot of the other ones, and that was one of the first ones too, so I don't know what happened at St. Louis there. But, having ridden the one at Great America, the one at St. Louis, and I got to ride the one at Magic Mountain this past October, and that one was also a nice one as well. It had some extra stuff in it. It actually reordered some of the stuff that happens in the storyline a little bit. So a little bit different, all little slight variations, but, at the end of the day, you got to lump them all together. Otherwise, it's which park is closest to you, but pretty much the same concept.
I think it's really, some people might get on us for lumping them together, but I really think that's the better way to do it, to kind of give it a fair shake. Because it's not a ride, like a Men in Black where you might travel to that park, and that's, you know what I mean? You won't travel to another Six Flags park just for Justice League. Yeah,
and the thing about it is Universal is a destination park where that draws people from all over.
Yes.
Whereas, your Six Flags Over Texas or Six Flags Great Adventure, they draw from other places, but that's the primary fan base is from that local area, so it doesn't make sense to separate them, I think.
Right. So, we'll stand by our decision to lump them all together, but because we did that last year and it still did very well. So this year it does actually win. I rode a Justice League ride for the first time this year. I rode the one at Great Adventure and the one at Over Georgia, and enjoyed both of them and rode both of them several times, and have gotten quite good at it, if I do say so myself. So, Now we'll move on to the favorite non-shooting dark ride for 2017. Coming in at number 5 with 9% of the vote. How about this, Andy? Curse of Dark Castle, which just now for the folks, we're recording this on Wednesday, January 24th. So just last night, we heard the news that Curse of Dark Castle will be no more at Busch Gardens Williamsburg, and you folks voted it as your number 5 favorite non-shooting dark ride.
A real shame, but
yeah. So coming in at just under 10%, and number 4 is The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man at Universal's Islands of Adventure. Coming in at 10.5%, number 3 at Disney's Animal Kingdom, Flight of Passage.
Yeah.
And that is one that you said that you would expect to see rise as more people get to ride that ride. So,
well, to be honest with you, Pandora this year was just completely swamped, where I think a lot of people may have just skipped it. I've heard a lot of people who went down there said, I don't want to deal with this at all. Just the hours that, even over this past Christmas break, the number of people in those queue lines was astronomical, at a swamp time. And I feel that one, as more people ride it and as more people get to Disney might not be a place that a lot of fans go every single year. But as more people get to ride it, I think we're going to see that one slowly creep up these charts here.
Sure. Number 2 and number 3 separated by the smallest voter margin in the history of the Ride Warrior Choice Awards, only by 3 votes for any of these categories. With 22.5% of the vote at number 2, Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey from Universal's Islands of Adventure. And at 23.3% of the vote, this year's Ride Warrior Choice Award for favorite non-shooting dark ride at Disney's Hollywood Studios, The Twilight Zone, Tower of Terror for the 2nd year in a row.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess
this is one that you're not as happy about.
I like the ride. I just think there are far better rides across.
See, it's one of my favorites.
Yeah, I just I guess.
Okay. All right. Well, let's move on to kind of the last of our, evergreen topics that we always seem to vote on this year. We'll go to favorite drop tower of 2017 for the Ride Warrior Choice Awards. Coming in at number 5 from Cedar Point, Power Tower. I think that's more of a Cedar Point, bias there maybe. Coming in at number 4, Lex Luthor, Drop of Doom at Six Flags Magic Mountain, which is one of my favorites.
Yeah, I rode that one. It's a nice one. It's got a nice view.
Number 3, a little bit of a surprise here. How about this? The Haunted Mine Drop from Glenwood Caverns out there in Colorado.
That's an interesting one because it just opened up. I wouldn't have expected that many people to get out there, or maybe they're just voting because it sounds like a really awesome idea because it does. I know Coaster Studios was all over that one. Coaster Radio.
Yeah, Coaster Radio. Well, Mike and EB from Coaster Radio are actually in the pre-show. Their voices are in the pre-show, and they were big supporters of getting voters to vote in the Ride Warrior Choice Awards this year. So I have a feeling that some of the Coaster Radio folks may have been voting that one pretty highly there.
Sounds like a pretty cool ride.
A lot of them got out to try it.
Yeah, if I ever get out there, that's something I want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Coming in at number 2 with 19% of the vote is Zumanjaro, Drop of Doom from Six Flags Great Adventure. One that it was underwhelming for me. I've always said the Zumanjaro is just really high, but the drop itself is okay. I like Lex Luthor.
But how do you then rectify that with Lex Luthor? Because isn't it basically the same thing?
Because Lex Luthor, the King to cost structure is very rigid. On Lex Luthor, when the Superman car comes up the tower, the whole thing, it sways up to 2 feet in either direction. And I felt it swaying the 2 feet in either direction. I thought the damn thing was going to fall over.
Yeah.
And I was scared to death on Lex Luthor, and that's why I loved it so much. So there you go. And number 1, once again, 34% of the vote is Falcon's Fury at Busch Gardens, Tampa.
Absolutely.
I think that's definitely one of, if not the correct choice for an award such as this.
That ride is just so amazing and so
it's so different and so it puts such a nice twist on the traditional drop tower.
And it's just such a rush when you ride that one. Like the first time I was on it, and I'm not a huge drop tower guy. I prefer space shots personally. But that one, that one's one that like scares the wits out of me, but I still ride every time.
All right. Well, let's move on now to some of the new categories for this year that, first-time categories, if you will. And some of these, again, were suggested by some of our fans. Let's go with favorite signature food item, right? So this is one we haven't done before. Much to your dismay, coming in at number 6, cheese on a stick at Cedar Point, missing out on the top 5 by just 2 votes.
What? Cheese on a stick? That's like... That should be the runaway favorite forever. Like, come on.
Well, coming in at number 5 is the blueberry soft serve ice cream at Kings Island, a longtime staple of that park. And that's sort of a Midwest thing, too, because I know Holiday World has, like, the utterly blue ice cream, and I think a few other parks do it. But Kings Island is the park that's really known for the blueberry soft serve.
I'll tell you, the blueberry ice cream is outstanding. And
I love it.
It's outstanding, and if you like Beat the Beast at all, there's a picture of me eating a blueberry right in the open.
That Banshee Media Day with the Banshee swirl I was really hoping. Okay, so to go to that Media Day for a second, I was really hoping that the pink was raspberry, and instead it was just vanilla dyed pink, and I was like, no, blueberry and raspberry put together would be awesome. Too much berry, I guess.
Yeah, too much berry.
Berry overload. Coming in at number 4 is the Potato Patch Fries from Kennywood Park. One that you're kind of ho-hum about, but I love the Potato Patch French fries, and I love them with bacon and cheese. And Lake Compounds has very similar Potato Patch Fries, probably because they were both owned by Kenny Corp at one point. But the Potato Patch French fries with bacon and melted cheese, and if you're Pennsylvania style, you go with some salt and vinegar. You can't go wrong with that. You might pay for it later, but they taste good. On the way down.
I'm partial to the Bernardi's fries at Cedar Point. The fresh cut fries. I think they're better, to be honest.
And the fresh cut French fries came in at number 8 on this list.
You go. Okay.
So they were still pretty high up there. Coming in at number 3 with about 10.5% of the vote is Dole Whip at Disneyland. How about that?
That's interesting. I've never had it, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah, I've had it once. A different spin on a traditional type of treat, if you will.
Yeah.
Coming in at number 2 with 17.5% of the vote is Butterbeer at Universal at the Wizarding World of Harry Potter.
Danny, I struggled with this one. I stood there and looked at that screen for at least an hour to decide between cheese on a stick.
You did not.
I did. It was the most agonizing choice I've ever had to make. And at the end of the day, I went with Butterbeer. I really did. Yeah.
All right. I myself actually went with the Potato Patch Fries. Actually, I can't remember if I went with the Potato Patch Fries or the blueberry ice cream. I can't remember now. I think I went with one of those two. I might have actually. I either went.
You voted for all 5. It sounds like.
I think I might have. I either went with the blueberry ice cream, the potato. It's been so long since we voted. It was back in October, right? I either went with the blueberry ice cream, the Potato Patch Fries, or our winner with 29% of the vote is Dollywood's famous cinnamon bread.
The only reason to go there.
Oh my God! Well, I'll tell you what. We just locked in our plans to visit Dollywood on opening weekend with the Coaster Crew this year, and it was funny. Tim, who helps run the Coaster Crew, in the event page on Facebook, he was talking about. We've got ERT on lightning rod, we've cinnamon bread, behind the scenes tours, and someone was like, ERT on cinnamon bread.
Well, sometimes you need it with those lines that form there for that.
Yeah, well, so looking forward to a cinnamon bread breakfast on March 17th with the Coaster Crew at Dollywood.
Gotta get the extra icing too, because if you Like, you can't just go with a ton of sugar. You need a ton and a half of sugar.
That's right.
To really put it.
And I remember this past year for the Coaster Radio Spring Meetup Memorial Day weekend at Carowinds, Goliath from the Ride This One podcast. Ride This One! He's from that area, and he smuggled a bunch of Dollywood cinnamon bread up to the Carowinds Hotel so we could have a nice little snack after the meetup.
Yeah.
After a full day at Carowinds, we all scarfed down some Dollywood cinnamon bread, so that was a good time. So Ride Warrior Choice Award for favorite signature food item goes to the Dollywood cinnamon bread. All right, so now we're going to get back to some more of the roller coaster related awards here. We're going to go for the favorite roller coaster manufacturer.
Oh, boy.
And this one, you already rolled your eyes. So this is
Togo!
Well, okay, so Togo did not get any votes.
Oh.
So I'm going to list off the rides that were not in any of the companies that got at least one vote, okay, that were not in the top 5. So Anton Schwarzkopf, Martin and Flemings, Aero/Aerodynamics, Vekoma. Vekoma got 3 votes.
Well, Vekoma's coming back, though. So
They are.
New Vekoma, and not so much old Vekoma.
Gerschlauer getting a handful of votes, as was Gravity Group, and getting 1 vote, ProSlide.
There you go.
How about that? I mean, I guess I don't water coaster. I don't know.
Because I'm a little surprised by that because I know of 2 hardcore water park fans of this program, and for it to only get 1 vote, I question that other person.
Yeah, well, and we could go back and look and see which one of them voted. I'm pretty sure I know the 2 you're talking about. I'm pretty sure we know. I know that those would be the only 2 that might vote for ProSlide, and I'm very curious. I kind of want to go back and look now. Maybe we'll look after the show once we go off air, and maybe we'll heckle the other as to why they didn't vote for ProSlide. All right. So coming in at number 5 for favorite coaster manufacturer is Mock Rides.
Okay.
Coming in at number 4, which this is actually the company I voted for, is Great Coasters International.
You are a GCI mark, though.
Yeah, I mean, I love GCI and B&M, but I figured a lot of people would be voting for like the B&Ms, and rides like that. So I went, and I'm a wood coaster guy, so I went for the wood coaster manufacturer with GCI coming in at number 4. Coming in at number 3 with 24% of the vote. How about this? Rocky Mountain Construction, number 3.
What?
Yeah, I'm as surprised as you are.
The sky is falling. What the hell? It's not number 1?
No.
It might be number 1 in a landslide.
No, and it's actually a distant 3rd.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
It's a distant 3rd, and second place is a distant 2nd.
Where are the RMC fanboys here?
I don't know.
I hear them on Facebook all the time.
Even the Beast fans don't like the Beast.
Yeah, even the Beast fans don't like the Beast. Apparently, even the RMC fans don't like RMC.
Yeah, so RMC with 23.8% of the vote, number 3. Coming in at number 2 with 30% of the vote is Bolliger and Mabillard.
Well, there you go.
There you go. And with 35.5% of the vote, number 1, Intamin. How about that? Even though they haven't built, save Wavebreaker, really, they haven't built a coaster in the States in about 5 or 6 years here. Aside from 1 or 2 rides, Intamin still runs.
Still holding that torch, those fanboys. Those fanboys still holding that torch there. Maybe, I think I voted for Intamin.
Yeah, well, I know you didn't vote for RMC, so...
It was between Intamin and Wisdom. I couldn't decide. No, actually, wait a minute. There wasn't a single vote for Larson on that list?
No!
Whoa! Where...
I think we've got to have a discussion with your friend Dason over there because we know he's a big friend. He's a big fan of Larson International.
Yeah. Oh. Well, that'll change. You know what? That'll change next year when the world's largest super loop opens up. So
there you go. So Intamin is the Ride Warriors Choice Award winner for favorite coaster manufacturer in 2017.
Okay.
We're going to keep it moving right along now here with more of the coaster awards. We're going to go another new category, the favorite roller coaster collection.
Okay.
And this is an interesting one. Again, I'm going to go through the same sort of thing here. And I'm going to go through the parks that all got votes that were not in the top 5 here. Now, some of these only got 1 or 2 votes. So we had Six Flags Over Texas, Six Flags St. Louis, Six Flags Fiesta Texas, Kings Dominion.
Hold on.
You see how I skimmed over that one a little bit there.
Six Flags St. Louis?
I know.
Your best coaster collection?
I don't know. I'll play devil's advocate and say that they've only been there because I would assume they would vote for Worlds of Fun or Silver Dollar City over that.
Oh
but
my God, that's
only one vote for Six Flags St. Louis out of
I
386.
like St. Louis. I think it's a nice park, but to talk about its coaster collection,
Yeah.
it's kind of like, I don't know. I can't remember.
So over Texas, St. Louis, Fiesta Texas, Kings Dominion, Kennywood, Hansa Park, Fuji Q Highland, Europa Park, Carowinds, Wallaby Holland, Six Flags Great America, Portaventura, Canada's Wonderland, Busch Gardens Williamsburg, Busch Gardens Tampa, Fantasialand, Dollywood, Holiday World, and then coming in at number 6 was Alton Towers. Okay. Coming in at number 5 with 5.5% of the vote, Six Flags Great Adventure.
Okay.
Coming in at number 4 with 6% of the vote, Hershey Park.
Hershey
Park. Coming in above Six Flags Great Adventure, which I'm trying to think if I would agree with that or not, but that surprises me even if I would agree with it.
Well, it's hard because it's like we always think of parks as parks and not so much as coaster collections.
Yeah, if you took the coasters in a vacuum.
If you take the coasters in a vacuum, you look at Hershey, they have one really outstanding coaster and then a lot of, supporting coasters that are average to above average. And
yeah, I mean, I would say like Great Bear and so let's compare that for a second. So I would say like Great Bear and Batman are kind of probably pretty close to a wash.
Yeah.
In most people's books. I think Sky Rush is better than Nitro.
Yeah.
I would take Storm Runner over King Ka. El Toro, I think most people would take over Lightning Racer.
Yeah.
You've still got Comet, which is a pretty good classic wood coaster. You've got Wildcat. I would take Laugh Track over Dark Knight. Probably. Those are probably close to a wash, I think.
But then you have like those other steel coasters.
But then you have you have Bizarro, you have Superman, you have Green Lantern in there. I mean, you've got Skull Mountain still to consider there. You've got Joker, and then at Hershey,
Fahrenheit cancels one of them out. Like I don't know.
Fahrenheit probably cancels like a Bizarro, I guess, or like a Green Lantern.
If you were to say to me, this is hard. If you were to say to me which one has the more outstanding rides, I would say Hershey, because Storm Runner, Sky Rush are both pretty outstanding rides. Fahrenheit's an average ride. I think
Great Bear is probably the third. I think Great Bear is probably the third best steel coaster there. And I mean, you and I mean, I don't think Lightning Racer is overrated. I don't think it's one of the better GCIs. I think it's an average one, but I still think it's a good ride, and Comet's still pretty good. So I mean, there's 5 or 6 like pretty good coasters there.
Yeah. I guess I would say
train at both of them. You've got a kiddie coaster at both the same exact kiddie coaster at both of them.
The problem with Six Flags, and it's kind of like why I laughed about St. Louis, is it's hard to separate them because there's so many clones. So you got Batman, you got Dark Knight, you got Superman.
Yeah, that's a good point because
it's hard to separate them because they don't feel outstanding because you can get them elsewhere. So
maybe that would factor into some people's votes here.
Yeah.
Okay. So then at number 3 with 7% of the vote, how about this? Kings Island. I think the addition of Mystic Timbers really helped that because you definitely had Diamondback, Banshee as 2 outstanding roller coasters. More people like the Beast than they don't. And then Mystic Timbers adds really a 4th marquee roller coaster to that park. And I'm one personally who has always been a fan of Firehawk. I really like the flying coaster. I always thought Racer has been I think Racer is a strong ride. I think it's a fun ride. I think it's got really good airtime. Adventure Express, people always talk about that being, an above average mine train coaster, especially for, the theme it's got at the end. No, you don't agree with that. Okay. It's Kings Island is an interesting one because I think if you looked at Kings Island versus Hershey Park, I think you have 4 definitive outstanding, good, great or better roller coasters at Kings Island, and at Hershey Park you might have 2, maybe 3.
Well, it's kind of like how you're defining this category too, because I think Kings Island has the better standout coasters.
Mm-hmm.
Diamondback, Banshee, Mystic Timbers, and Beast.
Yeah.
But I think Hershey has the better supporting cast. Maybe I don't know.
Maybe, I mean, if you're considering the supporting cast rides like Fahrenheit, Great Bear, and
Super
Comet,
Duper, like Super Duper Looper's a nice
yeah.
ride too.
If you put like Fahrenheit, Great Bear, Super Duper Looper, and like Comet up against Racer, Flight of Fear, Firehawk, and
Bat.
The Bat. Yeah, I think then that's probably Hershey might come out on top there, but you probably have 1 or 2 more standouts at Kings Island than you do.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. Like, it's hard to tell how people like that's a close decision too. And I think it's what do you value more? Do you value the standout rides more? Do you value the overall coaster? The supporting cast in there too. If you line them up, back to back. I don't know. Both of those parks are kind of like.
Well, and the other thing that you may be considering here is maybe a little bit of a variety too.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, because Hershey Park has 2 GCIs. They've got a couple of Intamins. They've got they got 3 Intamins.
Yeah.
You got 1 B&M. Whereas Kings Island, you got 2 B&Ms. You got a GCI. You've got a Vekoma. You've got a couple Arrows. You don't have an Intamin. You have a couple years. So I think variety might be coming into play here too.
Yeah.
So at number 2, so Hershey and Kings Island were separated by 5 votes. Kings Island and our number 2 were separated by 4 votes, with 8% of the vote at number 2, Six Flags Magic Mountain. I don't think that's much of a surprise.
That's not much of a surprise. They have the most. Because when you start breaking it down and you start looking at X2, Tatsu, Twisted Colossus, those are 3 headliners right there that match up with the 2 underneath it very well. And then you start adding in that supporting cast of Apocalypse and Ninja and
Full Throttle, Riddler, Goliath. And,
there's a lot of
those are rides that you can't get anywhere else. Once you get into the Batman, the Batmans and like Green Lantern, you're getting rides that you can get elsewhere. But for the most part, Magic Mountain is a park that thankfully has not done a whole lot of cloning over the years.
Yeah, and I think Magic Mountain fits well into this tier here of these other parks. Obviously they have a lot more, but that's not always mean that they have good stuff. But the stuff that they have, their top of the line stuff, matches up pretty well with a Kings Island or a Hershey Park.
Yeah, and it should be no surprise that at number 1 is Cedar Point. And I think, for obvious reasons, because of what we just talked about with some of those other parks, you have the standout coasters, so you've got the quality, and then you've got the quantity. So you've got the quantity of Six Flags Magic Mountain, but you've got the quality of maybe, 6 or 7 top-tier rides. That some of these other parks only have 2 or 3.
You can make, and I got into arguments with your little buddies this past fall, but you can make the argument that Cedar Point has the best of every category. That you could sit there and say that they have people say Millennium Force the best Giga. People say that Magnum is one of the best hypers anywhere. That when you talk about best hypers, it's in the discussion. People say that they have that Rougarou now is one of the best floorless coasters. Iron Dragon, maybe not so much. They talk about there.
Yeah, slim pickings at that point.
Slim pickings. Steel Vengeance, I think, is going to set it apart. The best, hybrid coaster. Obviously, wood coasters they're lacking on. Gatekeeper, a lot of people say that that's the best wing coaster. I think Thunderbird is personally, but if you take out that launch, maybe Gatekeeper is. I love Raptor. I think it's one of the best inverts anywhere. So you go down the list, and they have something for everyone. Their supporting cast is better than a lot of the casts at these other parks that we talk about. And that's what sets Cedar Point apart from every other park, is that is that you will not touch that collection ever, ever. They would have to tear down the entire park before you could start touching that collection. And I didn't even talk about Maverick. I didn't even talk about Raven. I didn't even talk about,
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, there are probably 5, 6, 7, 8 coasters that if they were at some of these other parks we mentioned, they would be top 3 coasters. Yeah. Maverick, Millennium, Magnum, Top Thrill Dragster, Raptor, Valraven, Gatekeeper. I mean, even Rougarou would be probably a top 3 or 4 coaster at a Hershey Park, and it's maybe number 8 there at Cedar Point. And I mean, Blue Streak is a damn good ride. It's small, but it's a damn good ride. There's just so much. I mean, Gemini is probably the 10th best coaster there, and I think Gemini is a rather good ride. Yeah. And add Steel Vengeance into the mix now as well.
You can forget it, right? Yeah. This isn't even a discussion anymore. I believe anyone who tries to put up an argument against this, that's saying that Cedar Point is by far the best roller coaster collection anywhere in the world, is just fighting against, I don't know, shadows, I guess.
So not much of a surprise that the Ride Warriors Choice Award for favorite coaster collection goes to Cedar Point.
Absolutely.
All right. Similarly, we're going to go to the favorite coaster club event. Now, we discussed when we were putting together the ballot how we were going to do this, and we figured that we weren't going to do a special event that was like just 1 year. We narrowed this down to pretty much either events that happen every year at the same park. So you'll see a couple of these in here that are either park run or maybe run by a specific club. A good example would be like a Virginia is for Coaster Lovers, which is a coaster crew event that's every year at Kings Dominion and Busch Gardens. Or like a Roller Coasters A at Canada's Wonderland, which is the ACE event in September every year at Canada's Wonderland. So events like that, single year, like 1 year events that are just like, okay, we're going to do an event at this park this year. We didn't really consider those. Or if the event is run like by the park, like number 5 here, which is Dollywood's Thrills in the Hills. Okay.
An event I've never been to, but an event that a lot of people talk about.
Yeah, I've never been to it either, but I do hear positive things about Thrills in the Hills, and I've been asked several times over the years if I'm going. Maybe that's one of these years I will have to get out to.
And I feel like ever since Lightning Rod, that event's probably going to take off a lot more because before, as much as people love Dollywood, I don't think there's a whole lot of discussion of it having an amazing coaster collection. It's a decent collection, but I think Lightning Rod puts it in that whole new category of, hey, if I want to ride coasters, Lightning Rod's probably the coaster I need to get on and maybe spend a little time on.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Similarly, coming in with 7% of the vote at number 4 is Kings Island's Coaster Stock event.
A fairly new event that they just started, about 3 or so years ago. I've been to it twice. It's a good event. It's well run. It's changed format a little bit over the years. From like a 2-day event that was Saturday, Sunday to a 2-day event that was Friday, Saturday now. So they've been changing formats, and I think that's interesting because a lot of these events that we're looking at are 1-day events. Thrills in the Hills, some of these other ones, just 1 day or a split event at 2 different parks. This one is 2 days at Kings Island. And Don does a good job with putting together a nice little program to fill out the day with, Diamondback tours and Beast tours and Haunt tours and all this other stuff. So, a fun event, I think overall.
Yeah, and Coaster Stock is not one that I've been to. It's always been one that I'd like to get to, but since it does occur at the same time every year, I would like to think that's one I could eventually get to.
Yeah.
Coming in at number 3 is an event that I do attend every year, and that is at Six Flags Great Adventure, Ace's Riding of the Bull. And obviously that is well known for being the nighttime ERT session on El Toro. Last year we were treated to a special viewing of the Golden Ticket Awards where El Toro won the Golden Ticket for Best Wood Coaster last year.
Strange that you like that one so much.
What's that?
Strange that you like that one so much.
The event?
Yeah, I'm
I think it's a great event. I particularly am a huge fan of the Mexican buffet lunch that we're given,
no, I would
and
not like that at
also
all.
the morning ERT on Nitro, because that's always a good time. Because Nitro, I've kind of learned. You've always said that you thought Banshee is a cold weather coaster.
Yeah.
I've kind of decided that I like Nitro better in the cold and in the morning, more so than I do. It just seems to run better, and I don't know why. But Nitro to me always seems like it's been a cold weather coaster.
I'm going to be honest with you. I'm beginning to think that most coasters run better in the cold. I just feel that they're faster.
Certainly, some of the B&M seem to run a little bit better in the cold.
Well, even like Maverick, like I'm not saying that it's like run it when it is like not warmed up, like because it's kind of slow in the morning. But if you get like a cold evening at Cedar Point and you run Maverick in the cold after it's been running all day, that thing's flying on that track. So.
Yeah.
Like I said, I've told that story a number of times. I don't need to tell it again.
Well, and the other nice thing about riding of the Bull is the tours. They do a complete walk back of Nitro's entire layout during operation. Great photo and video opportunities. Getting to do the same thing with Green Lantern and also King Ka, being able to stand right underneath the giant top hat of King Ka during operation is really cool. A complete walk back of Bizarro. And one of my personal favorites is going inside the Houdini's Great Escape ride building during operation and getting to see the magic happen at Houdini's Great Escape. That's always a real fun time. Now, the top two here were runaway number one and number two here. Number two at 25%. Hollywood Nights at Holiday World. This one got my vote for sure. This is, I always say that Roller Coasters A at Canada's Wonderland is like my favorite regional event. Hollywood Nights is kind of my favorite national and or park run event because it really is sort of, at this point, it's really a national event.
I really enjoy the event there. It's usually a pretty good night. We've had some crazy nights there. I
got to do the, my friend Chris, he invited me to join him on the Voyage Lift Hill Walk last year. I also won the Voyage Zen Ride, which we talked a little bit about, which served as a memorial ride for our friend Elaine Jackson, who passed away last year. The ERT, 7 hours of ERT over the course of 2 nights is absolutely unbelievable. Walk back tours of all the coasters, their entire layouts, the food and the spread they provide in the water park on Friday night to kind of welcome you and kick off the event with water coaster ERT is always one hell of a time. And, Raptor Dog is joining us.
Yeah, right. Raptor Dog's excited about the winner of this category.
Yes, right. So the winner with 31% of the vote is Cedar Point's Coaster Mania.
Oh.
Which consequently takes place on the same weekend as Hollywood Nights in most cases.
And that's always the
bummer.
hellish decision of the year. It's terrible. Because both of them are really fun events. Both of them are the 1 year, I think the first year I went to Hollywood Nights, the years were split, so I was able to do them both on concurrent weekends.
Yes. Because Hollywood Nights is always the weekend after Memorial Day, and Cedar Point's Coaster Mania is always on the first weekend in June. Yeah. So when Memorial Day is early, Hollywood Nights still occurs in May. And 2 years ago, when 2015, when Thunderbird opened, that was the case. So you and I got to do Hollywood Nights together, and then you went and did Coaster Mania the very next weekend.
Yeah, and I've also done both of the events in one weekend, and that
yes, you have. You did that 2 years ago.
That was quite the experience. That was rough on my. I tell you what, that
doing
was
Friday at Cedar Point and then Saturday at Holiday World. And I mean, for those of you who've been to Hollywood Nights, you know that Saturday is quite a long day because the park opens at 10 and then you're there till midnight for ERT. Most people get up and go to Kentucky Kingdom the next day.
Yeah, and that Friday at Coaster Mania is one hell of a day too. That you're up early in the morning and you're there all the way till midnight, riding coasters. So that was quite the weekend too. These two events are so great, and it's hard to separate them. Cedar Point, ever since that they've instituted the new policies there with capping the numbers, I feel that the events become a lot better. At some point you were like, the lines are getting way too long. It's something needs to be done, and they fixed it. A lot of people may not like being shut out of the event because they don't buy the tickets early enough. But the fact of the matter is that they had to do something, outside of, keeping the entire park open and maybe spreading out the lines a little bit more. But, it's just a fantastic event, I think. I'm sitting here right now and I don't know what I'm going to do this year. I honest to God do not know what event, and I may choose not to go to either of them too. So
they're both outstanding. I've been to both events. Hollywood Nights is an event that I always say that I will do every year. And I've done it every year since that first year we did 3 years ago. I've already have it planned to do this year. Coaster-mania is an event I did before. The ERT is, again, awesome, and both parks do an outstanding job. If you haven't been to either of those events, or if you haven't been to one of them, make it a point to try and get to both of the events. Coaster-mania is going to be hectic this year, obviously, with Steel Vengeance. If you haven't been to Hollywood Nights, this might be the year to do it, because so many people will be going to Cedar Point for Coaster-mania this year because of Steel Vengeance. So Hollywood Nights might be a bit abandoned, which means more rides for me.
Well, I'm just sitting here thinking about this, and it's making me more depressed because I don't know where to go.
Yeah, well, there you go. So we're going to move on. So the Ride Warrior, congratulations to Coaster-mania at Cedar Point. Ride Warrior Choice Award for favorite Coaster Club event. Going to go a little bit farther with the events here. We're going to go for the favorite Halloween event. And this is one that the Golden Tickets do this one, and it's interesting because all their votes are done by July, and then they have the votes tallied by August, so they're actually voting for the previous year. That's one of the nice things about us not opening up voting until November. You can consider the current year's events if you wish. So coming in at number 5, our friend Brian Bass will be thrilled to see Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party coming
Where
in.
did we get Disney fans from all of a sudden?
I don't know. I mean, we had Dole Whip earlier. We had Tower of Terror winning a Dark Ride. We've got some Disney fans voting in the Ride Warrior Choice Awards here. Coming in, get ready to roll your eyes, Andy, because at number 4 is Phoenix Fall Fun Fest at Knoebels Amusement Resort. There's the eye roll. All right, we can move on.
It's not even a Halloween event.
Coming in with 8% of the vote at number 3. How about this? Scarowinds.
Dude, Scarowinds is legit.
That's what you had said. Yes,
I did
Scarowinds. If you don't get shot or in a fight, it's a great event, I hear.
Well, sometimes. I did Scarowinds in 2016, and I thought it had an amazing energy there. The scare actors did a phenomenal job. It gave me the old school Cedar Point feel, because I used to love Halloween Weekends in the haunted Cedar Point. In recent years they've kind of toned it down, I feel, a little bit.
Yeah,
Heroine's still coming at you hard. And I can't speak highly enough of Scarowinds. I loved it.
Well, and I think at number 2 is going to be another one that you love with 12% of the vote, Not Scary Farm.
I'll tell you what, that was my pick in this year, in this year's poll. This was the first year I got to do Not Scary Farm. I've heard big things about it. And I'll tell you what, if you like the theme park haunt experience, Not Scary Farm is by far the best.
Yeah.
Universal, which obviously is going to be number 1 here, right?
Yeah, Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Studios Florida, 22%, the runaway winner here.
Halloween Horror Nights, if I could compare the two for a moment here, Halloween Horror Nights is your traditional haunt. That they have the rides open up, but it's an afterthought. Like, very rarely do you even, if you want to do the event in one night, you probably don't have enough time to go be riding Transformers, or you may be able to catch a dinner at Harry Potter Land or whatever. But it's focused on the haunt. Whereas I feel like Not Scary Farm still has that theme park feel to it. And the rides, Silver Bullet, Ghost Rider at night was really, really cool. Accelerator wasn't open this year, but
Ah,
you could imagine how that would play in there. But I'll tell you what, the haunts were top notch. And I really think that the only thing holding Knott's Scary Farm back is the fact that they only rotate so many haunts every year, which for me, I like. To me, when I sit down at in the fall and try and figure out where I'm going to go, Halloween Horror Nights always has that lure because it's like, well,
there's so many different things every year.
they have a completely different slate of haunts every year. So it's kind of like, well, if I want to experience that, I have to go this year.
Right.
This year I chose to go to Hollywood instead of Orlando because I was out at Scary Farm, and Hollywood I was not impressed by. Whereas I thought Hollywood was right up there in the previous time I went up in 2015. Horror Nights Hollywood this year was a huge disappointment for the price that they're charging. Scary Farm blew it out of the water. And the problem with Scary Farm is that since they don't change their slate every year, I feel like I don't have to go every year. Where I don't think I'm going to go back, in 2018 here. Even though I loved it that much, I think I'm going to wait for it to rotate some stuff out in order to get a whole new experience. But I'll tell you what, Scary Farm was an amazing haunt. Just Ghost Town by itself, with the amount of fog they pump in there, you could not see your hand in front of your face. It was insane. Like it was crazy. I loved every second of it. So not Scary Farm was definitely my number one, but Horror Nights is probably, if you want the traditional haunt, is probably the way to go.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I got to do in the last 2 years, as I said, now that I have a real job and I'm not in playing hockey in the fall anymore, I've actually had the opportunity to do a lot of Halloween events the last couple of years. And we specifically say Halloween event for the folks who might like the family friendly ones, like the Mickey's Not So Scary, and Hershey Park in the Dark is a family friendly one, and Phoenix Fall Fun Fest. But I think we typically get most of the votes for the haunt events. I thought that Alton Towers Scare Fest was pretty good. Not being a super expert on the haunt events, there were varying opinions on the one maze that actually went through the towers called Terror of the Towers. But I really enjoyed it. It was one of these mazes where the actors will actually touch you and grab you and stalk you throughout the building, and you're actually walking through the honest to goodness castle from the 1800s that's in the middle of Alton Towers. I thought that was just one of the coolest things. Like, we're walking through a haunted maze themed to the towers in the towers. Yeah. I thought that was just a really, really surreal experience, because that's something you think about. Like, wouldn't it be cool to walk through this old abandoned castle? It's what if it's haunted and whatnot, and you kind of get to live out that experience a little bit in Terror of the Towers. So I enjoyed Scarefest. The one at Thorpe Park was okay. They love The Walking Dead at Thorpe Park. They had like 3 or 4 different mazes themed to Walking Dead. They had I'm not a Walking Dead I'm not a huge television movie guy.
It seems wherever Walking Dead goes, the parks fall in love with it.
Yeah.
I don't know if the people, like, at the very beginning when Horror Nights started The Walking Dead, everyone was crazy about it. And since then, they just shoved it down everyone's throats, and people are to the point where if they even hear Walking Dead mentioned, it's kind of like people start throwing stuff at their computer screens.
Well, and they had a Saw maze too that was over by Saw the Ride, which was interesting. I liked Alton Tower. I don't know. I thought Alton Towers did a little bit of a better job maybe with the event itself. But that being said, I think with like the Saw Ride and everything, it felt like Thorpe Park was. I feel like Thorpe Park is that park that's always like kind of themed to a haunt, because the area by Nemesis Inferno is like themed to a volcano that's destroyed a town. Like Swarm is like an apocalypse themed ride. Then you have Saw the Ride, which is themed to Saw. Obviously, it's like the Darren Brown's Ghost Train is like this zombie type VR ride. So it's like the whole park is sort of haunt themed by itself, even when it's not during haunt season. I was really impressed when I went down to Busch Gardens, Tampa 2 years ago and did their Hallow Scream, which a lot of the Florida folks say Halloween Horror Nights is the most extensive and best event, but it can get very crowded sometimes. And if you want maybe the most bang for your buck in terms of a haunt event in Florida. Howl-O-Scream, it may be the better option for you. We did a lot of the new houses when we went down there. We did Unearthed. We did the Black Hole, or the Black Spot was a pirate-themed one. We did Motel Hell. We did a lot of good ones 2 years ago, and Unearthed was the one that actually took place underneath Quasi's station and structure. And Sue and I actually got to go through that one by ourselves because we had the quick queue to go in a half hour early, so it was just us two going through the house.
That's crazy.
So that was a fun experience. We got lost a couple times, but
I'm looking in your background here, and it looks like there's a person behind you. Like, I don't know. Like, this segment sponsored by Hauntiverse.com.
Wait a minute. Is it that guy with the mask?
Yeah. No.
That comes on the show every once in a while?
There's just like a light behind you, and it just started freaking me out when you started talking about that stuff.
Oh, weird. Okay. Moving on. So yes, Ride Warrior Choice Awards for favorite Halloween event goes to Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Studios Florida. No big surprise there.
Yeah.
All right. Now we finally asked the age-old question this year: wood or steel? And that's all we asked. And I think we all knew how this one was going to come out. I was hoping it would be a little closer, being a wood coaster guy. But what's that?
To your dismay.
Yeah, to my dismay. I was hoping it would be a little closer, but it is steel over wood by a 71 to 29% margin.
Come on. Like, where do you find 21% of the people still alive that like wood coasters? That's why.
No, I thought it would be a little bit closer to like 65.
Is there anyone under the age of 40 that voted for wood there?
I think you're just a baby.
I don't think so. Like, seriously, you would take let's first discount Voyage. Okay, so let's just take that out of the.
Well, you can't discount Voyage.
I'm going to. Would you take like Maverick or Millennium Force?
No. Hold on, whoa. If you discount Voyage, you got to discount like Fury or Maverick. Like
come on. All those three rides just by themselves are better than every.
No, I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm saying I prefer the feel of wood coasters in general. I'm not talking about a specific wood coaster over a specific steel coaster. I'm talking in general. You know, and I think that's how people kind of approach this, which is probably why steel ended up winning by an almost 3-1 margin. So, all right, we've got the last few categories here. We're going to least favorite roller coaster. And coming in, we had a 3-way tie for 4, 5, and 6. So we had Viper at Six Flags Magic Mountain, Mind Racer at Six Flags America, and Anaconda at King's Dominion. Okay.
Oh, bad one.
Coming in at number 3, we had Corkscrew at Cedar Point.
Okay, yeah.
Number 2, we had Vortex at Kings Island.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
And for the second year in a row, the Ride Warrior Choice Award for least favorite roller coaster goes to T3 at Kentucky Kingdom.
I don't get it. I don't get it.
Yeah. See, you like T3.
I like T3. And when you talk of SLCs...
Now, hold on, folks.
There's no
Andy, hang on one second. I'm going to talk to the audience, just me to them. So, folks, this is the guy who doesn't like almost any ride that you guys like. So then when you guys say that you hate T3, this is the ride he likes. Okay, Andy, welcome back.
What? The SLCs, why do people hate the SLCs? It's the headbanging, it's the horse collars. T3 has eliminated that. So just by doing that, it should at least be better than any other SLC. And it is. It's far better.
I'm not saying it's my least favorite SLC, but I don't like T3 at all. And
then people haven't even commented on the roller coaster at New York, which is by far the worst ride ever made.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only ride ever where I've been headbanging on the lift hill. I will say that. That is definitely...
I can't vote for Shockwave anymore because they tore it down.
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, so we lost one candidate there for sure. See,
and Mean Streak, too. Mean Streak, Mean Streak
still got a lot of votes. So, and so did Son of Beast. But I'll tell you what, it's funny because Manhattan Express is the only ride that I've ever been headbanging on the lift hill, but I liked it better than Shockwave because even though I was being banged around, my head was being banged around a lot, I wasn't also having a bicycle seat rammed into my crotch, and it's fun. I think, as EB said on Coaster Radio once, I think the fun of voting Shockwave as the worst coaster was always the vulgarity of the crotch banging, was always the allure of that.
Well, and I'll say something else. That was even the worst part. The worst part was trying to get out of that ride, out of those butterfly restraints.
Oh yeah, because you have the butterfly shoulder restraint, but then you have that weird bar that's on a springs, so you push it down, and then when you lift it, and then when you let go to open up the butterfly, the thing rockets back up and hits you in the balls.
I don't get it. It was awful. Oh my God.
Or non-testicular area if you're a female, but the same. Yeah, right. The old "How's Your Father" from the King's Dominion Shockwave, and the Canada's Wonderland Skyrider. May they rest in pieces. So anyway, let's move on to the most overrated coaster of 2017 here, and this one's always interesting because last year I think we had a couple rides on the most overrated and the most underrated list, and we're gonna see this again here. So number 5 for most overrated, check this out: Maverick at Cedar Point.
Oh, Raptor Dog's having an issue here.
That's all right.
Maverick is I don't know, because I don't think people are, I don't know. People are rating Maverick correctly now. Like, how is that overrated? Like, I don't get
it. And the thing is, it wasn't overrated for many, many years. Is it because it was number 4 in the roller coaster thing last year here for the Thrilling 32? Is that what is causing people to call it overrated now? I don't know. Number 4, King Dukat, Six Flags Great Adventure.
Are people rating that one highly?
Well, that's the thing here, because the definition of overrated is a ride that everybody likes and ranks really highly that maybe shouldn't be. So like
Storm Chaser.
Well, okay, yeah, yeah, kind of. But like King Dukat is a ride that I don't think that many people actually like. So I feel like that's one that I think people were just voting a second time for least favorite.
Yeah.
This one. Now here's one that you could maybe make an argument with. Valraven at Cedar Point for most overrated. And this one is one that puzzles you, but I think it's because I don't think people like the best on the dive coasters, as I've said many times.
If you said to me, if the most overhyped ride, I would be more accepting.
Maybe that's what people are thinking here too.
But overrated, because once again, I don't think people are rating Valraven very highly unless you're considering that some people like myself say that it's the best dive coaster. But still, I don't have it very high on my. It's not my top 10 or anything. Are people to me? I just don't. I don't get it. So.
Yeah. Number 2 here is going to be one that you definitely agree with. It is the Beast at Kings Island.
Come on. Like, I've said my piece on the Beast. Although Danny, I think I need to make a proclamation this evening.
Uh-oh.
I think I need to make a proclamation. And I
don't know what he's going to say here, folks.
It's, Beat the Beast came about off of a number of social media tweets and group chats where I said there's nothing that, that the Beast is the bottom, that everything is better than the Beast. Well, Danny Miller, I'm going to make the proclamation here this evening that I think we indeed have something that the Beast is better than. We've never had this before. Ever.
No, this is news to me. I don't know what's going on here, folks. This is news to me.
This is the proclamation that I think we have to switch it to hashtag better than the Beast to hashtag better than Storm Chaser, because pretty much everything is better than Storm Chaser at this point.
Oh man, you're making so many friends now.
I don't care.
Yeah. And now I would have to look back to see if this is the same winner as last year. I believe it is, but the Ride Warrior Choice Award for most overrated roller coaster, 13% of the vote, Millennium Force.
See, now I can agree with that. not that I agree, but I can see why people would vote it, because people rank Millennium Force highly.
Yes.
And thus they're saying, no, this is overrated. So that makes sense to me.
Yes.
I don't agree, but it makes sense.
Right. I disagree, but the choice makes sense because an overrated coaster, by definition, would be something that is ranked highly in a lot of polls. So, like, the Beast would meet that description.
Yes.
Millennium Force would meet that description in ways. So now we're going to go to most underrated of 2017, and then we'll get into the favorite park award, and then we'll wrap things up. So coming in as the number 5 most underrated ride, Magnum XL 200 from Cedar Point.
Okay, Magnum gets a lot of hate lately, and I don't understand it. I love
unjustly, I think.
Yeah, I've never had one of these super bad rides that people describe, and I don't know if it's just the way that the lap bar falls on me. That it's just I'm just my legs are in that perfect position where the lap bar fits perfectly, where it doesn't lock down on me at all. It gives me a little room, so. Because that's what people complain about, is that at some point in the ride, the lap bar locks down and creates a very uncomfortable experience on those bunny hills, which I think are the most amazing part of that ride. So I do believe that Magnum, when people talk about hyper coasters, people tend to sometimes forget Magnum, but I think it's by far one of the best hyper coasters anywhere.
Yeah, Magnum is an awesome ride. I've always been a big fan of Magnum. Number 4, how about this Mako at SeaWorld Orlando?
Okay, I get it.
And it's a fairly new ride, so maybe a lot of folks think that maybe it's not getting the recognition it deserves. And because, we hear about Nitro and Diamondback and Intimidator, and they get a lot of love. They've been around for a long time, and maybe some folks think that Mako ought to be in the discussion with those types of rides, and maybe it's not yet.
Maybe I think that it doesn't, but,
No, well, maybe you're wrong. Coming in at well, coming in at number 3 for most underrated. This is one that I don't know if it was on the list last year in the top 5. Storm Runner at Hershey Park. People probably got excited for a minute there when they heard the word storm.
Yeah,
but no, Storm Runner at Hershey Park.
Be like Kingsman with people's heads blowing up there. Storm Runner's an interesting one, and maybe that goes into the soft restraints again that we were talking about.
Yeah,
on the selection show. I don't know.
I think Storm Runner is vastly improved as a ride that I get to ride every single year. I love Storm Runner so much. Storm Runner used to be a ride that I rode once in the front seat, and that was it every time I went, because it was shaky, it banged you around. But with those soft restraints, I'll go ride Fahrenheit once, which also has the soft restraints, and then I'll go ride Storm Runner, and we ride Storm Runner in the front row a couple times till it gets a line, because we're not riding it after that because the line moves slow. But we'll ride it 2 or 3 times a trip. I absolutely love Storm Runner with these soft restraints.
So maybe that's right, and I look forward to my trip to Hershey Park the next time to ride that one again.
Yeah. How about this? Number 2 for most underrated roller coaster, Gatekeeper at Cedar Point.
People love Gatekeeper, and people are gonna initially go to, hey, this is the Cedar Point bias again, but I don't know if it is, because we haven't seen that in a lot of these other, we've seen it a little bit, but for this to get to be number 2, that's pretty impressive here.
Yeah.
And Gatekeeper is a fine roller coaster, and I think the problem with Gatekeeper is that it gets lost in the outstanding collection of Cedar Point. That if you put Gatekeeper at a Six Flags Great Adventure, that's might be in their top 2 rides there all of a sudden.
Could be.
Like, Gatekeeper would be a headliner anywhere but Cedar Point. So I kind of agree with that too, that Gatekeeper is a fine roller coaster. You put it in any other park, and it's within the top 2 or 3 rides, I think.
Yeah, I think so. So now, the Ride Warrior Choice Award, we had the same sort of thing happen last year. So it was number 5 for most overrated, but the Ride Warrior Choice Award for most underrated roller coaster, this year goes to Maverick from Cedar Point. So there's some people who think it's overrated, but there's more people who think it's underrated.
I think Maverick is finally getting its just rewards. You look at all these different polls. It's in the Golden Tickets top, 20 or whatever. It's in our top 10 usually. Last year it made it to the Final Four. It was number 5, I think.
Yeah, it was number 4 last year, and I think that the fact that it's on both of these lists is probably a testament to the fact that it is improving. Because maybe there's some people who haven't ridden it with the soft restraints yet, and they're still thinking old Maverick. But then you have the people who have ridden it with the new restraints and think maybe it's not getting as much love as it still should be getting.
I personally voted for Kumba here because I think
Kumba was another one.
Kumba is the forgotten ride, I believe, and that ride provides amazing rides, especially at night during Holostream at Tampa. That ride is out of control amazing, and I absolutely love Kumba, and I would love to see Kumba have a Kumba Renaissance, just like we had the Raptor Renaissance. A Kumba Renaissance, I think, is in order as well.
Yeah.
93, 94, that's the year for B&M. If you want to ride a good B&M, you gotta go back a little ways.
Well, Nemesis is pretty damn good. Yeah. So
I'm not going to contest that.
There you go. Yet. All right, you ready for the last one for the night? It's the big one.
Yes.
Now we're going to the favorite park for 2017. So again, we'll go through the top 5 in a minute here, but I'm going to list all the parks that got at least one vote, and there's plenty of them. But we'll list all the rides or all the parks that got at least one vote. So we got Wallaby Holland, Maurice Piers, Knott's Berry Farm, Six Flags Great America, Six Flags Fiesta Texas, SeaWorld Orlando, Portaventura, Warner Brothers Movie World, Liseberg, Hansa Park, Gardaland, Disney's Animal Kingdom, California's Great America, Blackpool Pleasure Beach, Six Flags Over Texas, Epcot, Efteling, Tokyo, Disney Sea, Six Flags Over Georgia, King's Dominion, Kennywood, Canada's Wonderland, Six Flags Great Adventure, Busch Gardens Tampa, Silver Dollar City, Carowinds Disneyland, Alton Towers, Hershey Park, Knoebels, Kings Island, Six Flags Magic Mountain, Magic Kingdom, and Busch Gardens Williamsburg was number 7.
Okay, quick, name a park you didn't name.
Clementon Park.
Oh, geez.
Sesame Place.
Yeah. Maybe a big park you didn't name. St. Louis?
Yeah, St. Louis. St. Louis did not get a vote here, even though they got a vote for Best Roller Coaster Collection a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
I did not hear Discovery Kingdom in there.
Yeah.
So didn't hear Hollywood Studios in there either because they only have 3 rides right now. So in a tie for 5th place, we have Universal's Islands of Adventure, and we have Dollywood at a tie, both with 5%. Okay. At 5.5%, at number 4, we have Europa Park.
Really? Europa's been heard from finally.
Yeah. We actually had a tie for 2nd place at a little under 6% of the vote here each. We had Holiday World.
Really?
Holiday World tied for 2nd with Fantasialand.
That's an interesting occurrence there.
And those 2 parks were tied, and then Europa Park was 1 vote behind both of those. Dollywood and Universal's Islands of Adventure were each 1 vote behind Europa, and then Busch Gardens Williamsburg was 1 vote behind Islands of Adventure. So essentially number 7 and number 2 were all separated by 4 votes.
Wow.
4 votes or less. So it seems like there's one definitive in the voters as to what number 1 is, but after that, there's a ton of parks that people, if you don't pick Cedar Point, which at 40% is the top vote getter here for favorite park, after Cedar Point, if you didn't pick Cedar Point, there were a ton of other parks that all got basically the same. When you're talking about almost 400 voters, you all separated by 1 vote. You essentially had the same number of people deciding they liked parks like Fantasialand, Holiday World, Europa Park, Dollywood, Universal, Busch Gardens, Williamsburg, Magic Kingdom, Magic Mountain. These are all rides separated by just a handful of votes here.
Yeah.
So, it would make sense that if you're not voting if Cedar Point is not your thing and you want something more than just the best roller coaster collection in the world, there is a lot of other options for what you could choose based on what you like.
Absolutely. I personally think Cedar Point's the best park in the world. That's no question for me. But like you said, there's, different flavors for everyone. Some people don't like the rides. They like the experience. They like the ambiance better. They like whatever. But, it's interesting to see how close some of those parks are. And I think it's very interesting that Holiday World is on that.
Yeah.
Whereas a few years ago, Holiday World would probably not have been. But I really think that with the addition of Thunderbird, that it's added a different element to the park. They constantly try and update, their water park, which I think people are probably adding into the entire experience there. I think it's really interesting that Holiday World is up there. And then, of course, Fantasialand is always a place that I've wanted to go for a very long time.
Yeah.
But obviously Cedar Point, I think, is the correct answer always. And to hell with what the golden ticket says.
Yeah, well, and Fantasialand and Europa Park, two places I will get to visit in 2019 with the Coaster Crew, hopefully on the European vacation here. So that pretty much wraps it up. We already talked about most anticipated, which was Steel Vengeance, Time Traveler, Twisted Timbers, Wonder Woman, Golden Lasso Coaster, and Wicker Man now. Irion and Hang Time also tied for number 5 there. We talked about those on a previous show. So if you're interested in getting a full breakdown of the most anticipated ride, you can go back a few weeks, a few episodes where we talk about the rides coming out in 2018 and our personal lists of the most anticipated rides, but then also we'll break down what the fans thought from the Ride Warrior Choice Awards here. So, almost 400 voters this year in the Ride Warrior Choice Awards, by far our best year ever, nearly double. We talked about we had 228 last year, and we talked about, how can we possibly get much higher? Like, we're probably close to peaking out. We thought maybe we might get close to 300 this year, but to get to almost 400 was just absolutely mind-boggling for us to almost double our voter pool again. Andy and I really cannot thank you folks enough for everything you guys do. And not just voting, because it's, it doesn't take that long to go and vote, but we've had so many people share the ballot when it's time to vote on their Facebook pages, on Twitter. If they run websites or blogs, they post about it. We had so many different websites. We had so many different websites help us out this year. I'll get the page up and we'll give them one more shout out before we kind of put a close to the Ride Warrior Choice Awards this year. But we've had so much support and we've had so much growing support the last few years for the Ride Warrior Choice Awards, because it really is the voice of the fans. We talk about how the golden tickets are, you have to be subscribed to this publication, or you have to have been to a certain number of parks or on a certain number of rides. And that's not what Andy and I believe that this hobby is about. We believe that everyone should have a say as to what their favorites are. And we've come up with, quite honestly, the best possible way to make everyone's vote and everyone's voice matter. So I got the page up here. So I will thank everyone who helped support the Ride Warrior Choice Awards this year, and also the Thrilling 32, which will be coming your way next week, will be the first round results. So get your brackets in if you have not. If you don't have a link to the bracket, just go back to the Thrilling 32 selection show on this YouTube channel here, and in the description will be the link to the bracket. The full bracket images will be there and you can fill those out. But again, one more time, we want to thank obviously us here at COASTER.net and everyone who helps out here. Adam's Coaster Chronicles, Arthur Levine, the Best Park and Roller Coaster Seekers, BW Theme Park, Coaster Addict, The Coaster Crew, Coaster Studios, Coaster 101, CoasterRadio.com, LO Coaster, Negative G, the Amusement Park Rats, the Ride This One podcast, and the Theme Park Families podcast. And if you're a fan of In the Loop as well, they'll actually be talking about the Thrilling 32 Bracket Challenge on their episode that's coming out. I think by the time you're seeing this, it'll already be out. So give a listen to them over at In the Loop as well. Andy, it boggles my mind how successful this has been and how much support we've gotten from so many different groups within the community. It really has become not just about COASTER-net and the folks here, but it's become about so many different people with so many different backgrounds and opinions. It's become about everybody, and it's become about the fans.
Absolutely. That, like you said, we started this for a reason, and we're finally at the point where we have these lists where people are really participating, and we're getting amazing responses. And it's just been overwhelming because, like you said, the whole point of this was to get your opinion, not the opinion of separate groups, but to get a unified opinion of all these coaster enthusiasts, and hopefully in the future that it just keeps growing and growing and growing, that, every year we're shocked by it. And it's like you said, it's because of you guys that you're out there taking the time to cast your ballots and to let your voice be heard here.
Yeah, it's really been outstanding. And, Andy and I are always working on ways to make the voting easier and making the calculation process easier on us because, we do put a lot of time and effort into all of this. So, we're always looking for feedback. If you're not in the Facebook group, you can join the Facebook group. You might have to request to join it. It's Ride Warrior Choice Awards and Thrilling 32 Roller Coaster Poll. You can find it. If you can't find it, message myself or Andy or someone. Shoot us a message, comment down here, and we'll send you a link to it. We've got almost 500 people in the Facebook group, so that's where a lot of our folks get updates. That's where we'll be putting a lot of these updates. And when it comes time for voting, or if we, want feedback on how better to improve the process and keep growing it, that's where all that stuff will go through. So, join us there and, come along for the ride year round because we'll be posting stuff periodically in there as well. We've got a great following that's grown in the last several years here. It's a hell of a lot of fun.
Absolutely. So thanks for joining us here tonight. I'm, of course, Andy Barchek from Chicago, Illinois.
And I'm Danny Miller from Binghamton, New York.
And as always, ride on, Ride Warriors.
Thanks, guys. See you next time.